Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility. It's another book review for you here today. First of two that I'm going to be bringing to you today. This is another book by Laura Shenton. We reviewed her Jethro Tull book just 2 weeks ago. And this is all about Supertramp. It's called The Logical Book-A Supertramp Compendium, with a foreword by John Helliwell himself, right? Member of Supertramp, playing sax and flute and whatnot. So this is a small little book, Weimer Publishing, once again. Roughly about 175 pages, yeah, give or take. Yep, there we have it. So Laura, obviously, and she talks about at the beginning of the book, a massive Supertramp fan. Let's face it. Are there any other Supertramp books out there? I haven't done my homework or research, but I've never seen one, and maybe perhaps there is. So any book on in my book. So this particular book goes chapter by chapter. Each chapter focuses on one of the albums. Okay, so we start all the way from the self-titled Supertramp album from 1970, and it goes all the way to Slow Motion from 2002, and then you get an intro, obviously the foreword by John Helliwell, and then you get the last chapter, you get the continuing legacy, kind of like to take things out, and then the full discography. So I like those types of books, right? We review lots of stuff here on the channel, Martin Popoff's books, Tim Derling's books, right, that are kind of set up that way, kind of album by album and whatnot, which I like that format. I'm not sure I like the way this one's laid out, though. So basically, this book, goes album by album for each chapter, and it starts off kind of like, so there's the first album, tells you who plays on the album and track list. But none of these chapters really talk about all the songs all that much. Each chapter takes an album, and basically what the author does is she'll give a little bit of her impression of the record, but it's mostly filled with like interview snippets from the band or articles or reviews taken from other sources, or show reviews from the tour and that sort of thing. And none of these chapters really get too deep in the weeds on what these albums were all about, and some more than others. Obviously, like Breakfast in America, they go a little bit deeper, sort of, and Crime of the Century, they go a little bit deeper, sort of. But I'm finding with this book, I just finished it last night, and it was kind of like a frustrating read for me, is that she has amassed all of these, like I said, interview snippets or reviews from various magazines and things over the years of these albums, of these tours. And so many of them are kind of like redundant and just kind of repeat the same things over and over again. And if it's like a negative review, then the author does a little retort after the snippet and talks about how she doesn't agree with the review. Which, to me, is like, okay, that's fine. But personally, I want to hear more from the author about what she feels about these albums and song by song. Because some of these chapters here dealing with some of these albums, like, Even in the Quietest Moments, and, they don't even have a chapter on the live album, Famous Last Words, and, even the first two albums, there's really not that much information on the albums themselves. And I feel like if you're going in and not really all that hip to the music of Supertramp, and you really go in and read this book, I don't really know if you're going to get all that much information out of it to be able to decide for yourself, is this band worth investigating or not? Some cool photos. I wish there were more, but what you do get is, and the one good thing about the book that I will say is definitely worth reading for, is that there are lots of interview snippets from the guys in the band, specifically Rick Davies and Roger Hodgson, where they talk about the creative process, which I think from the beginning was a strange creative process about how these two guys as the main creative forces in the band work together. And in the end, that kind of drove a wedge between them, because I think when you got two personalities like this, if you're familiar with the albums of this band, you should know that, you know, when you got a Roger Penn song or a Rick Penn song, and they obviously sing their own songs, you get different flavors there. And it doesn't always, you know, it works when because you got all this variety, but then when on each album, but then I think it reached the point where that wasn't working anymore. And these guys weren't, I don't think they were ever great friends, or they were ever, they had their ideas about how an album should turn out, but they always knew we were going to bring our own songs to the table. We'll pick the best ones that fit the flavor of the record and we'll get it out. But they weren't actually writing songs together for the most part. And I think that eventually is what fractured the band. And they talk a lot about when Roger left after Famous Last Words, and how he just wanted to go off and spend time with his family and his kids and do his own thing, and the band wanted to kind of move on. And, you know, I think what I thought was also really cool about this book is that there are some live concert reviews from various venues around the world, and that gives you, as someone who never saw Supertramp, that gives you a little bit of insight of how magical it was to go see the band, especially at the height of their powers, specifically between Crime of the Century and Breakfast in America. So, yeah, I mean, I like the book. I think it has its faults, though, for sure. And I wish we got a little bit more information. That, like I said, there's a lot of repetition in the book from chapter to chapter, and especially within each chapter, where you kind of feel like they're saying the same things over and over and over again. And especially like when there's like the interviews with the guys in the band, it's like I don't think that all the interview segments were vetted properly, because there's lots of like things that were said here that, like, you'll be reading the beginning of a chapter and there's a quote from Rick Davies, and then you go 3 pages later and there's another quote from him, and he basically says the exact same thing. So it's like, even though the original interview took place from a different source, basically, and we've seen this before, a lot of magazines and whatnot, they ask the same questions all the time, and the guys in bands, they give the same answers, right? So here you have lots of the same answers throughout this book, which I think could have been avoided had they kind of... Again, let's hear more from Laura Shenton about her feelings about Supertramp, and less about all these interviews, and maybe that would make for a more interesting read. I don't know. Regardless, though, cool little book. If you're a fan, you probably want to read it, but just know going in that it's not perfect, but it's admirable, I think, to tackle a band like this. So, The Logical Book, The Supertramp Compendium by Laura Shenton. Go check it out. Like I said, Weimer Publishing. Get this wherever you get any of your books. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Also down below, got the links to our Ko-Fi page, our channel donations, our merch page, and our Cameo page. Thank you in advance for all your support there. It's greatly appreciated, and we'll see you soon here with more stuff. I'm Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.